I've been running from it, almost out of oxygen, hiding from it, trying to dodge the consequence. I've been running till my wheels fall off. Lord, tell me where the miracle goes. I've been.
What's up, anime heads? It's your boy, Anime Reaper, back for another video, y'all. And first, before we get into the actual anime thing, I want to say this. Can you go subscribe to 2 channels for me? One is my friend's channel. It is called Ghost Reaper. He has a video up. It's on GTA 5. And if you could go subscribe to my gaming channel, which is Gaming Reaper, and then space 199, then you can go subscribe to both of those channels, and that would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into it. So in the last episode, basically Deku knocked out Bakugo, and maybe like a week or so after, maybe not even, Deku is digging around in the basement, and he's looking at all his dad's old stuff when he feels something leathery, like a snake, and he grabs it and pulls it out, and he's like, and gets ready to try and like catch it to take it outside, when he realizes it's just the sword, but it's broken. There's nothing. There's like none of the sword is left. It's just the handle, the part that you hold. So he picks it up, and in his mind something goes through him and says, and he's basically like, and he opens his eyes and he has like a vision, and he has a vision of his dad using it. And he's like, Dad? And then the vision fades. And he's left with the sword. And the sword, it glows. And it goes inside of his arm. And actually forms a tattoo on his arm. And it hurts. And that's when the tattoo gets formed. The thing on Deku's face, it pops up, and it flares out his dark mana. That's what we're gonna call it, cause someone told me that that's what it was. His dark mana flares up, and then goes back. So yeah, there was just a way for him to have like the thing that Meliodas has. So yeah. So the USJ attack happens, and Deku has gotten used to he knows how to pull the sword out, but when he pulls it out, it takes a lot of energy, so he won't pull it out all the time, and the sword actually enhances his strength. So let's say, okay, so to compare Deku's strength to like 50% of One For All, Deku could beat All Might if All Might right now. Deku could beat All Might if All Might was only using 25%. If he could beat All Might, like when I'm saying beat, I mean demolish. Now 50, he'll have struggles. 70, nah, it's not happening. So that should tell you where he at right now. He up there. And freaking Bakugo can only use like 35% of it. So Bakugo right now is not even that strong at all. So yeah, that's there. So they go into the USG building, and 13 explains what it's called and everything. And all of them are like, oh, cool. But then that's when Deku, he feels something. And he's like, what is this? And he feels a strange feeling. And that's when he starts looking around. And he sees a black portal. And so does everyone else. And Eraserhead comes down from wherever he was and jumps in front of all the students and tells them to either get ready to fight or run, find help. And he yells at Ida. He says, Ida, run! Ida starts to run. Then he runs into the door, and boom, the door instantly stops him. And he's like, crap, I can't get out. And that's when Deku runs over to the door, and he punches it, and punches it, and punches it. And then he's given up. So he uses his dark mana to make, he actually, instead of, so the whole time when I was saying he made like a sword out of his dark mana, he cannot do that anymore, just saying. So the most he can do right now without wearing himself out, he can add his dark mana to his arms and or to like any part of his body, and it'll give that part of his body an enhancement. So he puts it on his arms and he punches at the door. And he still can't. The door is barely even getting dents. It's just getting scratches. So they give up, and that's when all the villains are in, and that's when they all get teleported. Deku actually got teleported in the sky, and he boom hits the water, and he is just sitting there. And instead of floating, Deku actually sinks. And just for no apparent reason, he sinks. Alright? He starts sinking. Cause like, a villain's grabbing him or something. And they're pulling him under the water. And that's when Suya jumps in and kicks the villain in the face. Grabs Deku, swims him up, throws him on board. Sees Mineta, and throws him on board too. And they hop on board. And they're all on the ship. And they're like, alright, what are we gonna do? And Deku has a good idea, and he says, but I'm gonna need you guys, after, I'm gonna need someone to help me, because I get tired, and it's hard for me to move when I use it. So, we gotta take out as many villains as we can with this. So, he pulls out his sword, and his sword comes from his hand and is in his hand. And he says, Suya, jump. And Suya jumps, and when she's in midair with Mineta in her hands, she whips her tongue, grabs Deku, sends him flying in front of her, with her tongue still attached to him. He whips her in front of him and slashes. And the water, it makes a tsunami that goes right over all the villains. Boom, splashing them and hitting them all to the bottom. And yeah, basically knocking all of them out. Or most of them out, whatever. So, then they land actually where they can see that the Nomu is on top of Eraserhead. And also Kanchan shows up with I can't remember his name. With the Hard Boy 1. Yeah, Hard Boy 1. And they're all like, what the? Get off of Eraserhead. And they rush in, and that's when the Nomu smacks the other three away. He smacks Mineta, Suya, and Hard Boy 1. I can't remember his name for the life of me. I will remember it next video, but I just can't remember it right now. Yeah. So, it's basically Bakugo and Deku. And Deku gets mad. And Deku still has his sword out. And he makes his mana come out. His dark mana. And it covers his arms. But then it also starts to cover the sword. And Deku smiles. He says, hey, Nomu! Or he says, hey, thing! And then he lunges at it. And he says, how about you get a taste of my blade? And slices it. And it actually stabs into the Nomu. The Nomu pulls it out and heals. And yeah, I don't know if that Pacific Nomu had a healing power. But I mean, if you had a shock absorption power, right? Why wouldn't you have a power that would heal you just in case someone decided to use a knife or a gun? It kind of makes sense to me. I don't know. Maybe I know the Nomu was designed to fight All Might, but if you're any good hero and you realize punches aren't working, you're gonna pick up like something sharp and just kill it. or just stab it in its arms or its stomach. So I mean, yeah. So then Deku is like, ugh, and Bakugo comes up from behind and explodes it in the back. And Deku drives his sword dead into his chest, plunging it and pushing the Nomu down to the ground. And that's when Deku and Bakugo high five each other and say, yeah, we did it. But right as they're talking and they're checking on everyone, the Nomu gets up. The Nomu pulls the sword out, walks over to them, and tries to stab Deku, but the sword goes through, and Deku turns around, punching the sludge villain, grabbing the sword, or not the sludge villain, punching the Nomu, grabbing the sword, spinning around, slicing the Nomu. Then he rushes the Nomu, slicing it over and over, but it's just healing. And that's when Bakugo says, hey, slice him this way. And Deku slices him the way of Bakugo. And Bakugo throws off the biggest explosions he can, using his gauntlets. And the sludge villain goes flying. That's when All Might comes in. And he sees the sludge villain flying, and he just goes for its face. Boom, plunging it into the ground. That's when Deku notices the exposed brain. And he rushes over to it and stabs it in its brain, killing the Nomu. And yeah, and that's actually what happens in the arc. And everyone is like, Deku, you didn't have to kill it. We could have just captured it. And Deku was like, my bad. But it was hurting Mr. Aizawa, and it could have hurt all of us. So anyway, any means necessary, we had to get rid of it. And that thing did not seem human. And that's what other people were saying. And no one was mad at Deku anymore, because All Might said that that's what he was going to do. That thing did not look human. And All Might explained to them, like, it could have been someone's quirk to make these things, to make these creatures. So it might not even have been human. So yeah. Moving on. After that, school is suspended for a week, and because of the press and all that, they have to figure out how the villains gotten there. So yeah, and then during that week, Deku and Bakugo have a little rival fight. So this is to hone one of Bakugo's. Bakugo came up with a new ability, actually. And he calls it reverse explosion. So I thought of this. So he would take some of his sweat and he would throw it on you. Like, he would have like his gauntlets in his gauntlets, and he could spray his stuff at you, right? And then he would explode you forward to him, and then boom, hit you dead in your face. So he would basically spray his sweat behind you, bring you closer, and hit you dead in your face. So that's what he would do, and that's basically what he was working on. And Deku was working on controlling his mana sword, as he called it. He called it a mana sword because it took great amounts of his mana to do it, or his dark mana to do it and all that. So that's what he called it. So they both pulled them out. And actually Bakugo was just learning on how to make his sweat into his hand, so he could just zoom. And I know he probably can't do that in the anime, but just think about it. If one for all is enhancing his abilities, why can't he just control his sweat? So that's an ability he has. He can make like sweat grenades, where it's not like in the gauntlets. He legit doesn't need the gauntlets. He just holds out his hand, and whatever the sweat from his arm, or the sweat from like his arm and stuff, will go into his hand, and it'll make like a bubble of sweat. He can throw it. It would land on the ground. It would expand, and whenever he wanted to, he could snap, and boom, it would explode. So that's what they're working on. And Deku so before, when he was fighting Nomu, Deku could only use 10 minutes before he would before he would not be able to use his mana anymore. He had to wait for it to like recharge. So yeah, and Bakugo, when he first wanted to do this thing, he could only do it like little bubbles. Now his bubbles are bigger, and yeah, so they're more like a bouncy ball instead of a marble. So yeah, and Deku sword is sharper and it's not as wild. Like Deku's sword, like on the edges, mana was flying off. Now it's controlled. It's steeled. You can see that it's not. He's not losing power when he uses it for no reason. He's not using too much power when he uses it, so he can use it longer. Okay, that's actually gonna be in this video, you guys. And if y'all liked it, already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, go check out those other 2 channels I said at the beginning of the video, and subscribe to those, and hit the notification bell, and comment down below any new what ifs you want me to do. So without further ado, I'll see all you anime heads in the next video.